Hi, everybody. Welcome to Up in the Air. I'm Troy Merritt. Up in the Air is made possible thanks to our dedicated members of NGPA and our industry partners like Delta Airlines, who we're going to hear from today, who join us in our mission to build, support, and unite the worldwide LGBT aviation community. Without our annual events, we've had to work hard to make up some of that space here in the digital landscape to remain connected with our membership and our partners in the industry. We make Up in the Air available to everybody because we believe in sharing our mission with the world. We ask that you consider joining our mission by becoming a member of NGPA today. Go to our website, ngpa.org, and click Join Now in the upper right-hand corner. While you're there, check out some of what we have to offer, including scholarships, events, mentorship programs, and local chapters, and a lot more that NGPA has to offer. Annual memberships begin at $49 and are available to everybody: pilots, flight attendants, aspiring aviators, aviation enthusiasts, and allies of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. When you join NGPA, you support our mission and help make programs like Up in the Air possible. Visit our website today. Consider joining NGPA if you aren't already a member. Let's get started here. So today we're going to hear from the Delta Airlines pilot selection team, a shorter webinar series. Today we're looking at about a half hour. We're going to get a pilot hiring update and brief from that team. I wanted to update everybody on just a few NGPA things. General registration for our Cape Cod Classic this fall in September is going to open on July 20th, so here in a few days. NGPA is going to be at Oshkosh, so stop by and say hi at our booth. We're hosting a barbecue available to all of our members and our guests on the 30th of July in Oshkosh. And our scholarship window closes on August 31st here. So if you or somebody you know is learning how to fly or pursuing an aviation education, check out our scholarships. We may be able to help you out with some money there. Visit our website for more information there. Travel's returning. I read yesterday that in May, the airline industry used 500 million gallons of fuel. And in June, the aviation industry used over 1 billion gallons of fuel, I guess that's a 100% increase, right? I think I'm doing the math there, right? Doubled how much fuel we used in going from May to June. Right? TSA screenings exceeded their pre-pandemic levels during the July 4th weekend. So we had more people traveling the July 4th weekend than we had in 2019. And the good news is airlines are hiring. They're hiring for all departments, right? All frontline employees are looking, all airlines are looking to fill some frontline employee positions. In fact, this morning, Delta Airlines announced that they've actually returned to profitability in their Q2 earnings call from this morning. Delta is a diamond sponsor of NGPA. They've been a longtime sponsor for our organization, sponsoring scholarships and our events. They've been a dedicated attendee to our expo in Palm Springs, California. We actually talked to Delta in March of this year, a few months ago. We talked about Delta's history, pandemic survival and recovery strategies, culture, pilot selection, and talked about the Propel program there as well. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what that conversation was, that's available on our YouTube channel. It's also available in our podcast channels. So head on over to NGPA on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Take a listen to that. There's a lot of great information in there. We don't plan on covering all those same topics today. We're going to take a look at a few updates and new information from Delta today. Joining me today from Delta is Eo McConan, the manager of pilot selection for Delta Airlines and flight operations, and Nina Van de Steek, the manager and let me get this right, manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion for flight operations, which I think is a really cool and unique position, a first for the airline industry, to my knowledge, that a flight operations department has a dedicated DEI manager and officer within that specific department, which I think is a really incredible move. So why don't we hear from them? Let's start off by talking about that. That's a recent move for Delta. What made Delta decide to include diversity, equity, and inclusion folks within the flight operations department?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's good to be back. I know we were here in March just a few months ago talking with everybody. And so we're happy to sit back or be back and sit and talk with everybody. And I'm happy to bring Nina, who is our manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think, that was something that had been looked at starting a couple of years ago of, looking at when you look at the industry and in aviation in general, so having somebody dedicated to help build a strategic plan and to help really kind of direct that focus. We've always had relationships with different organizations. And so having kind of consolidating that with under one person to really kind of focus and take it to the next level, I think is where that drive and that interest came from. And to your point, to have one, specifically for flight operations, we know flight operations and becoming a pilot, there's different paths, different challenges, and uniqueness to the aviation industry, to the pilot industry specifically. And so it's awesome to have Nina, and I'll let Nina jump in and kind of talk more about her role with operations.
Nina,
And
hi.
thank you. Hi, thank you guys so much for having us. This is my first up in the air with you all. I was not on the March one, so thank you so much for the warm welcome. Very excited to be here. As both you and Eob mentioned, it is one of the first things of having a DE&I manager within an aviation field, especially flight operations. So I am excited for the journey ahead of me and to really partner with Eob and the rest of the pilot hiring and selection team and in building that strategy and that footwork for us to do. We've said at Delta, we hire the world's best pilots. That will never change, but we always want to make sure we're hiring the world's best pilots without regard to race, ethnicity, sex, religion, gender, age, even sexual orientation. And we want to make sure that we're fostering our pilot group and building our pilot group with a reflection of our customers that we serve in the global destination. So I think we have a lot ahead of us. And like I said, I'm excited for the journey.
That's awesome. I forget where I heard it the other day. In fact, I was talking to a friend who works at another airline, but he was saying that the thing about aviation is that we fly diverse people. We fly everybody, and we fly over diverse places. The industry is intrinsically diverse by its nature, and that should be reflected everywhere, including the flight deck. So I think it's really exciting to see that. So I have a question here for you, and I suppose I have my answer, but I'm curious to hear what you think. Does hiring diverse pilots mean you're not hiring qualified pilots? This has been something that's discussed. So is hiring diversity mean you skip over quality?
No, I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive. I think we're hiring and looking for qualified, diverse pilots.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's just one component of it. And it's not that we're targeting any, specific attribute or anything like that. It's just kind of, what you were saying and what Nina was saying is really fostering that pilot group that's reflective of the customers and the places that we fly to. So it's not, we're not hiring for the sake of diversity, or sacrificing quality. It's just making sure that we're doing everything in our process and our hiring process that really helps build that pilot group.
Absolutely. All right. So I understand that Delta has the flight operations team there in the pilot hiring, pilot selection department, is made some recent changes to the process, the hiring process. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, it's funny. 3 months ago when we were sitting here, and we always said that, we would start hiring again when our customers tell us they're ready to start flying. And as you saw and as you alluded to, they're definitely doing that. But this was a process that started even before COVID. Was really taking a step back and looking at our hiring processes and how we do things, and really, is there room for improvement, or what can we be doing better? And COVID, during that time, I think we weren't hiring. We working on it. We've been, looking at things, and so we made some changes. Some changes came out of that. So anybody who's familiar, and we talked about this on our recruiting page on Facebook, where we used to have a 2-day process. We've kind of split that out now, where the testing is remote. It's done online, remotely proctored. And there's some benefits there where you can do that at a place and time of your choosing. and then within a given window. And then if you're successful in that, then we invite you to Atlanta for the 1-day interview process, which is what we had done in the past, which a lot of people are familiar with, which is meeting with our panel, taking the MMPI, and meeting with the psychologist after that. And so really, we were looking at what can we do to improve the experience for candidates. And so consolidating it down to 1 day, so that we're trying to be respectful of traveling to Atlanta and doing the interview, being respectful of people's time, and just trying to see how we could make it more efficient.
Absolutely. So my understanding is, to clarify, you moved the job knowledge test to the front end, or is it removed altogether?
Actually, so that's kind of one of the things that came out of that, is there is no longer a job knowledge test to study for. And so it is completely removed. So if you have your, the Aerodynamics for Naval Aviators book, I remember having that when I studied for my interview. You don't need that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a copy of that sitting over on the bookshelf myself. So when does this begin?
So we have started. We sent out our first round of invites for the assessments last week, and we are getting ready to send out invitations for on-site interviews probably within the next day or so. And you'll see it's a build up as we kind of flex our muscles and get used to our muscle memory and learning how to do things again. But as we ramp up, you'll see the number of invitations and invites for both assessments and on-site interviews increase.
Excellent. So hiring's beginning to kick back into full swing
Yeah.
there. What is the hiring plan for Delta as you guys move through the rest of this year?
So we've talked about, and we've said between now and the summer of 2022, we need to hire an additional 1,000 pilots. And so that's going to keep us very busy going forward. So as we're looking forward to getting an opportunity to meet everybody and hire the next generation of Delta pilots.
Absolutely. So has the application itself changed at all since the last time the hiring window was opened?
So as part of that process, we'll say yes, that the application, not so much the application itself, it's still done via airline apps. But if everybody's familiar with the addendum section for the Delta application, those questions have changed. And so if you do have an application online, it's everybody who has an application online needs to go and make sure they update their addendum and answer those questions. So some of those questions have changed. Some of them, I think only 2 have remained the same, but there's a slew of new questions that you need to go answer. And if you haven't, your application shows as incomplete, and we can't consider that until it's a complete application. So we really want everybody, get the word out there to make sure that, hopefully you're updating your application regularly, but pay special attention to the addendum and make sure if you haven't updated it that you go in there and update it as soon as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you hear that, folks? Go update your applications. That's number one piece of advice for anybody looking for a job. You can't get a job where you haven't applied. If you don't update your application with new information, it's hard for them to call you and ask you to come interview. So
yeah, exactly.
Great. So I've heard, full disclosure, my boyfriend also works at Delta, so I hear some of these things. So, but there are some changes actually to the new hire process. Like you guys are offering hotels now. Is that correct?
Yeah. So with our first NDOC class that we just had, the first indoctrination class we had was June 22nd. And with that class going forward, so we always provided hotels during NDOC. But while you were back in Atlanta for your initial aircraft training, you were responsible for finding your own accommodations. And so now we've changed that going forward. So every new hire class, we are providing hotels while they are in Atlanta for training. So we know that that's one thing. It's, starting a new job, going to a new aircraft, going to training, that's stressful. And so that's one thing that we can take off of people's plates. And that's one thing that they don't have to worry about while they're here in Atlanta is, where are they going to stay? How do they get back and forth between training and those kind of things. So we're excited to be able to do that and share that with everybody.
Good. So sometimes I've heard a few people ask generally at different airlines, including Delta, what's going on with current CJO holders? I'm sure you've been communicating with them, but folks who are looking at, down the road interviews and what's to follow there?
Right. So we had a small CJO pool from prior to COVID. And so that was the group that we had started with our MDOT classes. And we're working our way through that pool. And by the fall, by the end of September, actually, we'll be able to offer everybody in that CJO pool a class date with Delta, so that's exciting. And then as we start up interviews, that'll we'll build our pool back up again. But the timeline right now, with that pool is, I wouldn't imagine anybody to really be sitting. When we talked about those numbers that we need to hire, I don't anticipate really anybody sitting in that pool for very long once they get the CJO.
Right. Good news. So short wait. So I'm going to interject here real quick and let everybody know who's watching. We do have a question and answer feature. We're going to take some time here at the end to go through some questions and try to provide some answers for you. We are going to keep this a little bit shorter today, so we won't spend as much time with that. But depending on what version of Zoom you're using, you should be able to find a little Q&A box towards the bottom of your screen. You can submit your questions there. When you submit your question, take a look through the list of questions and see if your question's already been asked. You can actually upvote and kind of push those questions to the top. That'll help us see what those questions are that you'd like to see answered. I'll read those out and let Eob and Nina take a chance to try and answer those. But take a look at the Q&A box down there. If you have any particular questions, go ahead and submit those there. For Eob, where can folks go to find more information about the pilot selection process for Delta?
Yeah. So airline apps, if you go to the page and click on Delta, it has all our minimums requirements to apply to be a Delta pilot. The other place that we like to direct people is to our Facebook recruiting page, the Delta Pilot recruiting page on Facebook. And so it's a good opportunity, a nice opportunity for us to interact with everybody. If you have specific questions, you can drop it in a DM to one of our moderators and one of our recruiters. They work very hard to try to get to everybody's questions regarding the hiring process or just specific questions in general with hiring applications and whatnot. So those are the two primary places that people really can go to kind of learn more, other than joining us here on Up in the Air.
Right. Good. Are you guys planning? I know in the past you've hosted internal career fairs at the Delta Museum, and then you guys have participated in career fairs at large. What is your plan for that? Do you have any? Have you made any decisions on when those will resume, or if they will resume?
So they definitely will resume. We do have that as part of our strategy. We typically host our one at the Delta Flight Museum in the fall. It is still to be determined this year. I mean, everything with COVID, we just aren't committing to anything yet. We just have to kind of wait to see where we are in the world with it. But we do have career fairs and we hope to resume them soon.
Great. We have a industry expo and career fair in Palm Springs. Now, I understand that Delta is planning on attending that. Is that correct?
Yes, we do hope so. We're very excited about it. As you mentioned earlier, we have been coming for a while now, and we truly enjoy talking to all of your members. So 2020 proved to be the year of the unexpected. So yes, we hope so, pending anything crazy happening.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the expo scheduled for, I think it's the second week of February. It's this year we're planning at the moment to have a 2-day expo in Palm Springs, California. We know that's a little bit difficult to get to, but that's where we've traditionally held it. We're going to continue holding it there at least for 2022. And we're actually expecting a large attendance from all of our sponsors and partners, including Delta Airlines. So we're excited. We're looking forward to having folks there. It's going to be it'll be a full 2 years since the world kind of tilted on its side there. So
it'll be a good one.
Yeah,
and I were both there 2 years
home.
ago, so we're looking forward to coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the questions, was there anything else either of you wanted to share about changes to the hiring process and updates from the pilot selection team there at Delta?
No, I know a lot of people, have a lot of questions, and so, like we said, the Facebook recruiting page is a great place to start with that. And we're just excited as we ramp up, looking forward to meeting everybody here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And we're just happy, again, with the partnership with NGPA. You talked about the expo, and we talked a little bit about the scholarships and having Nina. And one of the things that just made me think about is over the past couple of years, the honor and the experience of working with y'all with NGPA for the last several years, and having that opportunity to really, especially present scholarships to the young aspiring aviators is really cool. And so I'm excited to have that when we talk about the expo next year. I'm excited and kind of really looking forward to that opportunity again. So,
Right.
yeah, we'll see
Absolutely.
what next year brings.
All right. Well, we're going to take a few minutes here and try and get through some of these questions here. We've got quite a few coming in. I'm going to read them off to you. I'm not screening these ahead of time, so beware. But that's all you and how you answer those. But we do have some good questions here, just taking a peek. So first question I have here is from Miss Christmas Fielding. And the question is, in terms of flight hours and type of flight experience, what are you looking for in a competitive applicant? And then the second question, which is something I had written down and meant to ask, but how many internal letters of recommendation? So I've heard a lot about internal recs at Delta recently. So what's competitive at Delta, and what does an internal rec mean for Delta?
So in terms of competitiveness, really we look at the whole candidate, right? Your background and your experience. Somebody who may have come up with through the military is going to have a different experience in flight hours and training. As does somebody who comes up, through the civilian route, or maybe the regional world, or flying corporate. So, for us, it's we say the minimum 1,500 hours is the minimum, and we obviously look at that. Do you have the minimums? But once you get into the hours, we look at everything else. We look at your background, we look at your training, we look at your work history. So it's really everything in conjunction, and not necessarily. We're not looking for specific hours or range of hours in terms of who we hire. We've hired, people with 3,000 hours. We've hired people as high as 10,000 hours. So it really is just one component of your overall application in determining, whether you're competitive. If you meet your minimum hours, if you meet our minimum hours, I should say, at least from that perspective, that's just one area, but it's everything else that is also part of that.
How do you view recency, considering there's probably a good chunk of pilots who haven't had a chance to fly for over a year? How do you view recency?
So that's one thing. So before we go there, I want to your question about the recommendations.
Sure.
You only need one internal recommendation. Some people think that if you have 15 or 10, that it helps. You only need one internal recommendation, really, in terms of that. But for recency, that's something that we're sitting down and looking at, because that's a little bit a bit of a challenge, right? Especially kind of what you said with COVID and reduced flight hours. We've had our own pilots who haven't been able to fly. So some recency is important. I think in the past, we'd always said 100 hours of recency in the last 12 months. So as we move forward, as the travel industry, picks up and everybody has that opportunity to fly, that's what we're going to be really looking for is your hours starting to increase along with, the further removed from COVID that we go. And as the number of passengers, increase and flights are increasing, we would expect to see, that kind of ramp up back to a more normal window of recency.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for that. I've got another question here from Charlie. Charlie asked, I'm going to rephrase this just a little bit. Are Endeavor pilots considered for off-the-street interviews outside of, I know there's discussions about flow and stuff, and we talked about that before we started the call, but specifically to Endeavor pilots off the street, are they eligible for hire?
Yes, nobody's, no off-the-street candidates are ever prohibited from being considered as an off-the-street candidate with any program that we have.
Great. Let's see here. Next question from Matthew. I have, and this is a question I've seen a lot, is I'm a regional captain in the US from Australia, now a US citizen. I have an Australian Bachelor of Aviation degree that was over 3 years. A good proportion of aviation degrees are 3-year courses. Am I eligible to be hired at Delta?
So the general answer is yes. So what we do have is anybody with a foreign degree, we have a process, or there's a process where you go through, you submit your degree and your requirements, or the courses that you took through NACES. And there's a list of companies, organizations that are a member of NACES who will look at your education background and then submit a letter of what we call a foreign degree equivalency. And so really, so in this person's case, they would just have to go and get their degree validated through one of those organizations. And once they have that in hand, that would meet the requirements, the degree requirements for Delta.
Excellent. So if I'm correct, Delta requires a 4-year college degree, a bachelor's degree.
That is
minimum
correct. So
as
a
part of the
4-year
minimum
bachelor's
requirement.
degree. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so here's some more specifics on the interview process. From Kevin, 2 quick questions. He says, what has replaced the technical interview and what are the specific components of the interview? So maybe just a review of that. We may have touched on that already.
So I'm assuming when they say the technical components, they're not talking about the job knowledge. They're just talking about the interview itself.
Yeah, I would assume.
So the interview panel is that it's a series of questions that the interviewers are going to ask you, and really they're trying to get to know you, your story, and whether you're a good fit for Delta and Delta's a good fit for you, and just kind of how you approach a situation and kind of your thinking and rationale. So it's a mix of different questions, and really it's just designed to kind of to get to know you and your story. I don't want to say there's there's a specific technical portion and a different portion of that, but our panel interviews for the most part, again, it's as it has been in the past, is really just to get to know you.
Got it. And is there any technical assessment of your technical flying skills at all in the interview process?
When you say technical, or like not like a sim or
Yeah, a sim or a CRM type of interview scenario situation, or you previously had a test and exam. I know different airlines gauge technical skills outside of the kind of the HR level process of personality.
So as a general, you may get asked questions about situations that you've experienced in your previous career or path or job that you were in or presently in or previously in. So that part really hasn't changed. So they may ask you, just tell you to kind of learn about, again, your thinking, your rationale, ask you about specific scenarios or situations that you've ever experienced in your career journey.
They're going to ask holding speeds and altitudes. That's what I've gotten. That's always my check.
Now we're getting into specific questions, and that I can't get into.
Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, well, I'll put you on the spot. Good response. Let's see here. Here's an interesting question from Nathaniel. I am a first officer regional with 0 PIC, turbine PIC. I see TPIC, I assume it's turbine. I am fortunate to have a CGO with a low-cost carrier and plan on accepting. Every Delta candidate is different, but if Delta is my goal, do you estimate this move will hurt or have a negligible effect on my Delta application? How do you view experience? I guess is the question.
So that's hard to say, and not that it's the decision's hard. And me personally, I can't give career advice, and we always advise our recruiters in our interviews we can't give specific advice because everybody's situation is different, right? And so to the first part of your question, everybody's career path is different, but what we're looking at is what was your path, what was your journey, and did that make sense, to get to, how did you get to where you are today, and does that make sense in terms of that path? So we've hired people, again, with all different backgrounds, from, people, FOs from the regionals with no turbine PIC. We've hired FOs from low-cost carriers with, no turbine PIC. So really, it's not a specific, silhouette or footprint or path. It's okay, did it make sense? We look at your career progression from the time that you finished and your first job is, where did you go from there? And does it make sense? Were you building your resume, your work experience, to get to this point? So I can't say yes or no, it's going to hurt you, because it also, like I said, the application is, and I know drives people crazy because they want that specific yes or no. But we do that because we know not everybody's story is the same. So that's why we always say we look at your entire application. We look at your background, your story, and how you got to where you are today. So that's what we focus on. And that particular situation in totality with your application, it may not help, it may not hurt.
Right. All right. So I got a military question here from, well, shoot, give me 1 second. I just lost it. Let's see. From Christopher. As a retiring pilot, how far out from availability do you recommend applying for Delta? I know there's always a timeline footprint coming out of the military. How do you recommend folks handle that process?
Yeah, so relatively soon because we're hiring pilots. So
Yeah,
you know, I know with pilots with separation and depending on the path with it, you know, leave and terminal leave and everything, it can be a little tricky. But I think that within, you know, I would probably say definitely within 6 months is a safe bet.
sure.
You know, if you're within 6 months of retiring or separating, and you can put your application in any time. You know, so you don't have to wait. You know, if you know, just the most important thing is make sure you have your date of availability accurate and updated. And it doesn't have to be, you know, even if it's, you know, a year out, just keep it updated, because again, when we, you know, look at your application and when we want to interview, we want to know that we could put you in a class, get you through training and get you on the line and wearing the uniform.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions here. We're kind of reaching our time, and we'll wrap up here. Question from Michael: how do you recommend candidates prepare for this interview?
Do what I always tell people is do what it takes to make you feel comfortable and prepared. For some people, you know, it's sitting down with a friend and practicing. For others, it's talking to their friends. We know there's companies out there. You know, we're aware of that. So I always tell people it's whatever. If it's talking to yourself in the mirror and practicing, you know, and having a couple scenarios and questions in your head. It's whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable. Our interviewers, we want to get to know you, and I keep saying that. It's because we're really trying to get to know you and your story. And I sound like a broken record, but that's really what it is trying to get to know you. And so whatever practice, you know, everybody has a different way of doing things. You know, for me, it was just kind of preparing and getting my thoughts and kind of having the examples ready to go. For some people, it's talking it out with a friend and having them practice, you know, doing a mock interview. And I've helped done that with friends where I've sat and done mock interviews, you know, this was years ago. But, you know, just pretending to be, you know, hey, tell me about yourself, just so they kind of get that practice. But it's whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable in that interview setting, because we know, you know, it's a nervous and exciting time and
A lot of pressure.
a lot of pressure. So,
Yeah,
and we try not to. We know it. I experienced it when I went through my interview, but you know, again, we want to get to know you.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap up with one last question, and this is kind of targeted at the future of Delta Airlines. So Joseph asked, in today's earnings announcement, it was stated that business travel has recovered 40%. Leisure travel in June was above 2019 levels. Delta has shifted to new leisure routes this year to compensate for business travel. Do you see that shift being short-term until business travel returns, or more long-term as a result of virtual meetings? So I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit more with a bow here, because I'm curious about that. But what does the future of Delta look like? You guys have new questions. I'm thinking about questions because I'm trying to read them. You guys have some new airplanes that you've recently announced that you're ordering, and you guys had an earnings call talking about leisure travel being greater than it was before. Where's the future of Delta look over the next 12, 18 months? How do you guys see that panning out?
So I'd say bright.
Good.
No, you know, it like you said, we know we've seen leisure travel return, business travel is starting to increase, and we keep an eye out. You know, our network team keeps an eye on that, not me personally. But I think, you know, I said this back in March when we had this. It's our customers who tell us, you know, when they're ready to fly and where they're ready to fly, and our goal is to be ready when they are for where they are ready to go. So, you know, when our business, you know, we keep in touch, and we have a pulse with our relationship with our customers, both business and leisure. And so when they tell us they're ready to fly, we'll be they're ready to take them. So it's really listening to them, and that's what kind of drives and dictates, you know, where we go, and whether it's the pivot to leisure, whether it's business, and where we invest, you know, our crews and our resources. But our goal is to be ready when they are. And with Delta, you know, one of the amazing things, and people have said this before, and it really is true, when you look over the last year and when you look going forward, you know, we talk about the future of Delta, and when I say it's bright, you know, it's the one greatest resource and asset that we have, and people have said this, and I know it's cliche, but it's the people, right? It's the people at Delta Airlines, the heart and soul that they put into doing what it took, especially last year, one of the worst crises we've ever faced. And you see how people step up to do what it takes to help get the airline through that. And it's because of those people that, I'm really confident about our future going forward and our recovery going forward, and ending up, just being in a really good, strong place.
Absolutely. I'm optimistic too. We're optimistic at NGPA. We're really excited to see all of our industry partners, including Delta Airlines, back in a position to continue supporting us and continue, participating in the industry at large. It's really exciting. And folks who are part of NGPA and folks who work in this industry, we do it because we love aviation, and we find enjoyment out of this industry. So it's exciting to see it recover, considering where we were 12 months ago, sitting in our homes, quarantining and looking at the world from our windows and our TV screens there. So I'm excited. I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for joining. Nina, it's so great to see diversity, equity, and inclusion become an integral part of the flight operations department. And I look forward to meeting you in Palm Springs in 2022.
Yes, and again, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm excited to be a part of the team and partnering and continuing the partnership with you all.
Yeah, and there's some questions we didn't get to today. We could probably have spent another hour going through questions, and I know you know that. You've worked career fairs, and you've seen all of these questions before, I'm sure. Where can folks go again? You talked about it earlier. Where can folks go again with their questions?
Yeah, so the best place to start is our recruiting page on Facebook, the Delta Pilot Recruiting Facebook page. And so you can see, questions that previous people have asked. If you send a DM, we have our team of recruiters there who will go through and depending on the volume, they'll try to answer everybody's questions as it relates to hiring and the recruiting process. So that's a good place to start. And then, for our minimums, our application and airline apps.
All right, great. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us for Up in the Air and reach our members and talk about what's going on at Delta Airlines. We're excited for you. When the industry is doing well, that means NGPA does well. So we're very excited about that. So thank you for being here with us. Thanks to everybody who took the time to join us today. This will be available on YouTube as a video and on our podcast streams as a podcast to listen to. So if you wanted to listen to it again or share it with a friend or somebody you know, check out our YouTube channel or our Spotify, Apple Podcast. I think we're on Stitcher as well, if I remember correctly. So check out those streams for a replay of this. Should be available. Usually we have it ready tomorrow. It may take a few extra days this weekend to get that ready. And one last reminder, if you aren't a member already, or if you were in the past, consider joining NGPA. Go to our website, ngpa.org, click join now, and consider becoming a member of NGPA today. You'll be in the loop with what's going on and actually have access to information about our upcoming expo and winter warm-up community event in Palm Springs, and actually our Cape Cod Classic coming up this fall. So don't forget about those. We've got past webinars available on our YouTube channel, and look for more webinars for Up in the Air on our website. We don't have any currently on the books, but we do plan on hosting some more as we get to the fall, talking with some of our other industry partners. So once again, thanks EO, thanks Nina for joining us today. That's it for everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks, have a great day.